Have you ever stepped out your front door and suddenly paused? Maybe it was just a feeling, something subtle. The hairs on your neck stood up. Your chest felt just a little tighter. You glanced around, and there, across the street, stood your neighbor. No expression, just watching. It happens once. You shrug it off. Twice. Still a coincidence. But then it becomes a pattern. They're at their window when you take out the trash, on their porch every time you check the mail. Their blinds twitch the moment your door opens. They know your routine a little too well. They wave too often, or worse, they don't wave at all. Just stare, and that's when it hits you. This doesn't feel right. Your instinct kicks in. Something is off, but you don't want to sound paranoid. You second-guess yourself. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe they're just friendly. And yet, the discomfort doesn't leave. That's the problem with being watched. It's invisible until it isn't. And once you notice it, it changes everything. Your home, once your sanctuary, becomes a stage. Every window, a potential portal. Every open curtain, a possible risk. You start to hesitate. You censor your movements, and slowly, quietly, you stop feeling safe in your own space. But here's the question: how do you know it's real? What separates innocent coincidence from intentional observation? And more importantly, what should you do about it? Today, we're diving into 5 unmistakable signs that your neighbor might be secretly watching you. Not out of concern, not by accident, but with intent, maybe even obsession. Miss these signs, and you could be allowing a pattern of subtle surveillance to escalate unchecked. Recognize them early, and you can reclaim your space, your clarity, and your peace of mind. Throughout this video, you'll not only learn to spot these red flags, but also how to respond rationally, calmly, and effectively. We'll weave in lessons from Stoic philosophy, because the Stoics were masters of perception. They didn't waste energy on what they couldn't control, but they never ignored what deserved their attention. Seneca said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And in today's hyper-connected world, where we're watched not just by cameras but by casual eyes, this wisdom couldn't be more relevant. The goal is not paranoia, it's presence. It's being aware enough to protect what's yours and grounded enough not to be owned by fear. So if you've ever had a strange feeling about your neighbor, if your gut has ever whispered, "Something's off," this video is for you. Because it's not just about being watched, it's about being prepared. And in a world where boundaries are easily crossed, the most powerful thing you can do is learn to recognize when yours already have been. If you value your privacy, your agency, and your peace of mind, stick around and make sure to subscribe. Because in the episodes ahead, we're not just reacting to the world, we're learning how to master ourselves in it. Let's begin. Sign number 1, coincidental appearances. At first, it seems innocent, maybe even friendly. You step out to walk the dog, and there they are, leaning against the fence, coffee in hand. You come back late from work, and their porch light clicks on. They glance over, a subtle nod, maybe a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Once, nothing, and twice, still benign. But the third, fourth, fifth time, it starts to feel intentional. What begins as coincidence slowly starts to form a pattern, a rhythm, one that mirrors your rhythm. And if you pay attention, you notice something strange. They're not outside unless you are. They don't step out to water their plants unless your front door has opened. Their garbage bins only roll out when yours do. They're not just living their life, they're synchronizing with yours. Take the story of David, a quiet, ordinary guy, lived in a suburb, like taking evening walks to clear his head. Every evening, same time, same path. And every evening his neighbor would just happen to be outside. First, it was by the mailbox. Then, it was sweeping the porch. Then, It was standing in the driveway, doing nothing at all. It didn't click until David changed his routine. One night he walked 30 minutes earlier. His neighbor, still out. Another night he delayed by an hour. Same result. The man's timing shifted with his. That's not a coincidence, that's a signal. In psychological terms, this is called hypervigilant observation. It's when someone pays closer attention to your behaviors than they should, mapping your schedule, mentally logging your patterns, quietly collecting data. It's low-tech surveillance disguised as neighborly presence, and the more predictable your life is, the easier this becomes. The watcher doesn't need cameras, they just need consistency. Yours. So what does Stoic philosophy say here? It reminds us to observe calmly, without jumping to fear. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by the view we take of them. Not every repeated encounter is malicious. But if your instinct nudges you, listen. Stoicism isn't about ignoring discomfort. It's about recognizing it without being ruled by it. Your instinct isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. So what do? First, start quietly documenting. Log the time you leave. Note when they appear. Look for patterns. Don't react emotionally. Respond intentionally. Second, vary your schedule. Change your walk time. Leave a few minutes early. Delay your errands. Make your movements less predictable. Surveillance at its core depends on habit. Take that away, and you take away their advantage. Stoicism teaches mastery over the self, not the world. You can't stop someone from standing outside, but you can stop handing them a script of your life. In Marcus Aurelius's words, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do. Take back your narrative, one step at a time, one shift in routine at a time, and above all, stay observant, not anxious, just awake, because what starts as coincidence is often the first sign that someone isn't just being neighborly. They're paying attention in a way they shouldn't. Sign number 2, focus text surveillance. Let's move from what's visible to what isn't. In today's world, someone doesn't need to stand at their window to watch you. They can do it from their phone, from a wireless camera, even from inside their house, without ever being seen. Technology has made watching easier and hiding that watching easier still. It might start with a strange flicker near your window, a glint that catches the corner of your eye. Maybe it's a small lens, maybe it's something disguised as a light, a doorbell, or even a bird feeder. But something about it feels directed, too perfectly aimed. Or your phone begins to behave oddly. It heats up for no reason. The battery drains too fast. Apps freeze. The Wi-Fi drops at specific times, times that just happen to line up with your private routines. You tell yourself it's just a glitch, but part of you wonders, what if it's not? That's because it might not be. Hidden cameras and digital snooping are more common than most people think, especially when curiosity becomes obsession, and especially when someone has easy access to your proximity, like a neighbor with a clear line of sight into your windows, your Wi-Fi signal, even your habits. There's a deeper impact to this kind of surveillance. It doesn't just invade your space, it invades your mind. You start closing blinds during the day, lowering your voice on phone calls, avoiding certain parts of your home. You start censoring yourself, not because someone said anything, but because something is watching. And that psychological shift is profound. The Stoics would remind us, you may not control whether someone installs a camera, but you always control how you respond. And response, measured, aware, intentional, is your power. Marcus Aurelius faced the daily invasion of privacy. He was emperor, watched, followed, whispered about, constantly. Yet in his writings he returned again and again to one truth. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. You cannot control every intrusion, but you can turn awareness into action, and action into mastery. So what can you do? Start with your digital perimeter. Scan your Wi-Fi for unknown devices. Change your router name and password regularly. Use a network scanner to spot anything unusual, devices you don't recognize, strange connections. Cover indoor webcams when not in use. Position furniture and curtains in ways that limit unnecessary exposure. If you suspect a physical device, use a flashlight at night to scan for reflections. Many lenses give off a telltale shine. There are apps and detectors for hidden cameras, but sometimes all you need is a good eye and a healthy level of awareness. But most importantly, don't spiral. Don't let suspicion hollow out your peace. Remember, the Stoic mind isn't passive, it's prepared. It does not exaggerate threats, but it does acknowledge them without fear. You're not helpless in the digital age. You just need clarity, you need boundaries, and you need the courage to act, not with panic, but with poise. Because privacy isn't just a right, it's a discipline, one worth protecting. And those who violate it, even in silence, often forget that the one being watched may eventually begin watching back. Sign number 3, private details they shouldn't know. Sometimes the most chilling sign isn't what your neighbor does, it's what they say. A casual remark that lands just a little too close to home. Something they shouldn't know, something you never told them. Maybe they comment on a friend who visited, someone they've never met. Maybe they ask about an item you just brought inside, one that was never left outside the box. Or they mention your upcoming plans, plans you only discussed inside your home, never out loud in the yard. And then it hits you. They're not guessing, they're not psychic, and they're listening or watching or piecing things together from fragments no ordinary neighbor should be tracking. This kind of behavior is more than nosiness. It's pattern building, a subtle, persistent assembling of data that allows someone to map your world, not just your schedule, but your preferences, your purchases, your relationships. And this kind of mapping creates control. The more they know, the more they feel empowered to observe. The more they observe, the more emboldened they become. It's a slow erosion of privacy until one day your neighbor knows more about you than some of your friends, and they've done it without your permission. So how do you respond? This is where Stoic insight becomes vital. You can't control what they know. You can control what you reveal. Epictetus warned us not to concern ourselves with the opinions or actions of others, only our own. He also taught the value of inner boundaries, and in this case the principle is simple. Don't give your life away so easily. Privacy isn't only about hiding, it's about choosing what to reveal, when and to whom. It's a form of intellectual and emotional sovereignty. When someone breaches that boundary, the Stoic does not lash out. They take note, they reflect, they adjust. So here's what you can do. Start with a fake detail test. Casually mention something untrue near a window or during a phone call with the windows cracked. Say you're leaving town. Say a friend is moving in. Then wait, watch. See if that false thread makes its way back to you through comment, behavior, or change. It's a litmus test, quiet but effective. Then tighten the perimeter. Be mindful of what can be seen through windows or heard through walls. If you have open spaces near your property line, consider strategic planting, better window coverings, or repositioning high-traffic activities to less visible areas. And be intentional with casual conversation. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every neighbor needs to be updated. Seneca said, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." He meant, don't waste energy on what you can't fix, but also, don't feed what will only come back to disturb you. You owe no one your full story, especially not someone who's trying to read it without your consent. If your neighbor seems to know more than they should, don't confront out of fear. Document, adjust, withdraw, not out of paranoia, but out of clarity, because the person who watches closely always underestimates the one who watches back, even more carefully. Sign number 4, physical evidence on your property. Sometimes the most unsettling sign isn't in what you see, but in what's been moved. Your welcome mat is slightly crooked, a plant has shifted, your garbage bin isn't exactly where you left it. Small things, easy to explain away. Until it keeps happening, you begin to notice other changes. Your mailbox feels tampered with, opened perhaps, and then closed again just slightly out of alignment. A smudge on your back window where no one should have been. Footprints in the dirt just outside your gate, despite no deliveries, no guests. At first, you doubt yourself. Did I move that? Did the wind? But over time, the pattern becomes undeniable, and the question shifts from what happened to who's been here. This is the point where surveillance becomes intrusion. What was once watching from a distance has now stepped onto your property, quietly, deliberately. And the effect is more than physical, it's psychological. You don't just feel observed anymore, you feel violated. The Stoics knew this feeling well, not from neighbors, but from life itself. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire in chaos. At any moment, his plans could be disrupted, his privacy shattered. Yet he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This too applies here. When someone leaves traces on your property, you can't undo their step, but you can decide whether to meet it with panic or presence, because awareness is your defense, not fear. So what can you do? First, set telltales, small objects that create a record of disturbance, a matchstick laid across a doorknob seam, a twig placed under your mat, a piece of tape on a fence latch. These are not traps. They are quiet sentries, designed to tell you if someone is getting closer than they should. Second, document everything. Dates, times, photos, not for revenge, but for clarity. The more you observe, the less you guess. The less you guess, the stronger your ground becomes. Third, make small adjustments to your property. Increase lighting in blind spots. Secure mail with a lockbox. Install discreet cameras if needed, not to intimidate but to monitor. But most importantly, don't allow your internal state to be as disturbed as your space. This is the Stoic stance. Observe what's happening, acknowledge it, but don't surrender your calm to it. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Don't suffer twice, once from the act and again from imagining 100 more. The moment you let fear own your thoughts, the trespasser has entered not just your yard, but your mind. So stay sharp, stay grounded, and when the signs appear, treat them as what they are. Not paranoia, but information. Not noise, but signal. Because your home is not just where you sleep, it's where your boundaries begin, and whoever crosses them without invitation is already telling you who they are. Sign number 5, escalation into obsession. It doesn't always start with trespassing. Sometimes it begins with a friendly wave, a smile, a passing comment that lingers a little too long. Then it becomes regular, too regular. They're at your fence more often, asking questions that don't match the level of your relationship, offering favors you didn't request, dropping small gifts you never hinted at wanting. At first, it might seem like over-friendliness, but then it starts to shift. The eye contact grows intense, the presence becomes constant. They're always there, lingering near your door, leaving notes, commenting on your movements, referring to things you've done in private. And finally, it crosses the line. Maybe they show up uninvited, or worse, they enter your space, your porch, your yard, your life. What began as subtle watching becomes fixation, and fixation, when left unchecked, turns into obsession. Karen's story was just like this. It started innocently. Her neighbor complimented her garden, then left a gift, then offered to help with yard work, then began texting her, despite never exchanging numbers. The texts became notes, the notes became unannounced visits, the visits became late-night footsteps on her porch. This is escalation, and it is not rare. According to stalking behavior studies, many cases begin exactly this way, with small, seemingly harmless gestures that accumulate until the target's privacy is not just observed, but invaded. And here's what Stoicism demands in moments like this: not endurance, action. Marcus Aurelius, despite his legendary calm, never mistook stillness for passivity. The best revenge, he wrote, is to be unlike the one who did the injury. That does not mean silence, it means measured, principled response. So what should you do? First, document everything, every message, every visit, every conversation. Keep photos, record timestamps. If possible, install discrete security cameras, not to escalate, but to preserve evidence. Second, set firm boundaries. No more friendly tolerance. Do not excuse behavior that makes you uncomfortable. You don't owe politeness to pressure. You owe clarity to yourself. Third, if lines are crossed, involve local authorities. Make a report, even if it feels premature, even if you're unsure. The earlier you draw the line, the stronger your case becomes if things progress. Stoic wisdom isn't about stoic suffering. It's about clarity, courage, composure, and above all, freedom from fear. You are not powerless. You are not paranoid. You are simply seeing what many choose to ignore, and that makes you dangerous. To those who expect silence in response to violation, in the words of Epictetus, keep your attention focused entirely on what is truly your own concern, and be clear that what belongs to others is their business and none of yours. Your space is your concern. Your mind is your command. Your safety is not negotiable. And the moment someone begins crossing emotional or physical boundaries with increasing intensity, recognize it for what it is. Not curiosity, not care, but obsession. And obsession, when unacknowledged, becomes a threat. Conclusion. Let's pause and gather what we've uncovered. 5 signs, 5 patterns that, when seen alone, might feel harmless, but when placed together, they form a picture, a warning, a quiet unfolding of something that should not be ignored. First, the pattern of coincidental appearances, a presence that mirrors your own routine too perfectly to be chance. Second, the unnerving possibilities of tech surveillance, the feeling that you're being watched not by eyes, but by devices. Third, the knowledge of personal details they shouldn't know, comments that expose more than small talk should ever contain. Fourth, the physical disturbances on your property, subtle shifts that whisper of boundary violations. And fifth, the final stage, escalation, when attention becomes obsession, and the watching turns to something far more personal, far more dangerous. None of these signs, on their own, confirm malicious intent, but together, they demand your attention, your awareness, and most of all, your response. Not a reaction of panic, but one of clarity, calm, presence, the very essence of Stoic wisdom. Because Stoicism doesn't ask you to be blind to the world's dangers, it asks you to meet them with strength, with unshaken vision, to recognize what you can control and act on it fully. So here's what you do now. You pay attention, you protect your patterns, you track what feels off, you fortify your space. And if needed, you speak, you document, you report, not from a place of fear, but from a place of self-respect, because your peace is not a luxury, it's your right and your responsibility. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are disturbed by something external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." So revoke it, reclaim your space, guard your mind, and never hand over your clarity to those who seek to blur it. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe. Because here, we don't feed fear, we build discipline, insight, and inner power. And always remember, you are not paranoid for protecting your peace. You are wise for doing so before someone else decides it no longer belongs to you. Stay aware, stay calm, and above all, stay sovereign.